Good morning, everybody. My name is Steve Wisniewski. This morning's webinar will be discussing some basic modification of detailing templates to meet your Fabricator's requirements and to assist with minimizing the time required to scrub your details. Today we're going to be talking about a few things here that we're going to need to know to make that goal happen here. Those items being, first off, what are detailing templates and how are they applied to your member and material details? Where are those templates are going to be stored at, setting any type of default information that can be set, using different rules that are provided to find different templates and rules that may be created a specific annotation or dimension, how to go through and disable individual rules, and then possibly how to disable an entire template. And then finally here we're going to discuss how to modify labels and go through and set their label settings within the rules as well. So the first thing I want to bring up is going to be, what are detailing templates? A detailing template is just going to be a list of rules where each rule looks for a specific or a set of specific named locations on the member or submaterial detail. When all those named locations have been matched per that rule, the dimension or annotation or symbol or whatever entity was meant to be applied will be applied at that point in time. So now we have a little bit of understanding maybe what a detailing template is, being just a list of rules that are going to match those named locations. What is a named location? Well, before we get into that, I just want to take a quick step backwards here. Being that detailing templates are going to be are developed and made to be modified and or created by the end user, being you guys watching the webinar here, we're going to provide you with several different tools to help you in development and creating those different templates and rules. All the tools that you're going to be able to can be found under your process pull down, under template detailing tools. And like I said, this is going to be a list of all the different tools that you can utilize while developing and creating of templates. So the first one that I want to go over is going back to that question, what is a named location? Like I said, a named location is just going to be a list of properties about every single point on a member or material detail, and that list of properties is going to be unique from one point to the next point. Within my list of template detailing tools, I do have a tool in here called nearest names. When I select nearest names, you're going to see several tick marks or several X's appear on your member detail. Each one of those is going to represent a specific named location. When you go through and you're utilizing this nearest names, you're going to see that there's some different color coding dealing with those named locations. I just want to point out here, any time that you see like a green X, that's going to represent a named location pertaining to a hole. So the actual hole location. You have a few others up here above that, the whole group, calling out the anchor points and or whole group references. The next most commonly used type of point you're going to see is going to be sort of this yellow color mark. All that's going to be is basically any type of material point, whether that's a material vertex point is that, being down here, same thing, material vertex point. It could be a point out in space. This might be my work point. If there's any type of cope, you may have a cutoff point as well. So like I said, the yellow points are really just going to be material points. The green points are going to be your hole locations. And there's going to be some less commonly used points, sort of a magenta color here that we can see. All those are, like I said, just less commonly used generic type of points. Like, you're probably not going to use them too much. Anyway, to get a list or to view our named locations, if I click nearest names and I just select right on a point, I'll select this top left hole. It'll bring up the named location properties. Like I stated before, all a named location is a list of properties that makes that point unique from any other point on the detail. So like I said, we're looking here at the top left-hand hole. I can see all different hole properties regarding that, the whole column, the whole row, which whole group it's in, what material it's in, what view I'm on, and so on like that. Now, like I said, this will be unique to each point. You will never have the same point or same list of properties be identical to any other point on that member detail. So if I use nearest names again, but this time I select the top right-hand hole, like I said, my properties are going to be very similar, but they'll never be identical. In this case here, like I said, everything about this is going to be almost identical except for the whole column. We can see that the first one is my whole column 1 of 2, and the second one is whole column 2 of 2. Other than that, all the properties are identical. Another thing you need to know about these named locations is that you potentially can have multiple named locations in the exact same location. That being said, like I said, just think of this. This is a 3D piece of material. We're only looking at it in a 2D view. That being said, if I come back in here and do nearest names on that same hole again, I actually have two separate named locations at that exact same point. If I scroll down, I can see I have another set of properties here, basically another named location. Now, I can tell you that looking at this wide flange beam, the way the system's going to classify this is that there is actually a hole on the near side of the web, and there's a hole on the far side of the web. So if I look at the two different lists of named locations here, all these properties are going to be almost identical, but being that one hole's on the near side and one hole's on the far side, I do have a property in here called side. One set to near side, and the other one down here is set to far side. So as you are developing or modifying any type of rules within our detailing templates, make sure you do pay attention that so there can be multiple named locations that occupy the exact same point. So that's all a named location is just a list of properties that makes that point unique. And like I said, the detailing templates, the rules within inside those templates, scour through each member and material detail looking for those named locations. Once all those named locations are matched, the system will go through and apply that particular dimension or annotation, pointer, symbol, anything else that that rule might be set to apply. So next, I'm going to close out of here just for a minute. Where are our templates going to be stored at? How are they going to behave? Where do I pull them from? Can I control different areas of them? When I go to create a new project, I'll click on new, and I'll create a new project, and we'll call it Test 100 for the job in Fab. At the bottom of my Create New Project window, I have a template source field. And you can see that's browsing through to my 2015 data directory, into a folder called Detailing, to a folder called Defaults. So let's browse to that folder location really quick. So I'm in my 2015B data directory. In here I have a folder called Detailing. And within here I can have all of my source folders. Like I said, I have my default, I have my design data folder. Being that you can create your own modified templates, you can create any number of additional source folders in here for your particular company or for a particular fabricator. And then when you create a new project, you can browse to that particular source folder within the template source field down at the bottom. Now, inside the detailing folder, we do have a design data folder. As with any design data folder that's found in our data directory, anytime a new install is done, this design data folder is overwrote. Therefore, if you do go through and you make any changes to those detailing templates within the design data folder, just be aware that those will be overwrote upon a new install. So like I said, anytime you are making modifications and you want to bring it back to this global level, you will want to do so in the default folder, or go through and create your own additional sub-source folder. So when a new project's created, the system's going to go through and it's going to copy all the files out of that particular source file and just copy them directly into the job. Very similar to the way your material file behaves. You select a material file and it copies in all the materials associated with that into this local job. The same is going to behave with our templates. So once I go through and hit OK here, it'll go through and it'll copy in all my detailing templates. And once that's done, and once the job's created, back in my jobs folder, I'll have a folder in here for my job, Test 100. And within my jobs folder, I'll have a folder called Fabs, and within there, default_templates. So it's went through and copied all those source files out of the default folder from my detailing folder and pasted them right in here. From this point in time, the only thing I want to get into from here is just showing that these are just going to be standard JSON files. These are human readable. If I was to go through and edit a particular one, doesn't matter which one, it's just going to bring it up in a standard text editor. Let's see if I can bring that up and just use Notepad++. And we can see that it's just going to be a standard JSON file in here. You do have the ability to make changes within this JSON file. However, I do not recommend it. We provide several tools and an interface built into Drawing Editor to make all your different changes. Like I said, you can access the file in this type of a manner as well. But like I said, not really recommended by anybody here at Design Data. So moving on, I'm going to change back to my particular demo project. We know what a template is, and we know where they're stored at. Now, how do I go through and apply them or utilize templates while detailing my members or submaterials? For today's purposes, I'm just going to use detail members. So when I go to detail members, whether it's modeling or drawing editor from the main menu here, I'll go through and select whatever members I want to have detailed. For our purposes here, I'm just going to select a handful of members by using a saved selection list I created earlier on. And when I go to detail those, I'll bring up my member annotations and dimensions dialog box. If I wish to use detailing templates, there's a checkbox in here, detail using templates. With this option checked on, the system's going to utilize templates while detailing using their annotations and dimensions that were created. Being that these templates are going to have the ability to be modified and or created by the end user, we also provide a few other development tools within this window. When utilizing or when you're detailing a live project with templates, really you're going to only want to have these top two checked on. The other, I guess these other couple are going to be more for development access. The first one I want to discuss, though, is going to be remove snap lines. What is a snap line? All a snap line is going to be a construction line that's going to force dimensions to line up across a particular detail. So if I have a rule that's going to go through and apply dimensions to the holes on the left side of the member, a horizontal dimension, and I have a separate rule that applies the hole dimensions on the right side of a member detail, if I want those to line up horizontally, I'll assign them the same snap line. That being said, there can be several, if not hundreds, of different snap lines on a particular member detail. Therefore, while they're still just construction lines will not get plotted, they can still obviously add a little bit of clutter. You have the ability to remove those right off the start by checking on the remove snap lines. The next development tool within this window is going to be verbose progress updates. Once again, like I said, I would use this as development purposes only. I would not check this option on while detailing a live project. But what verbose progress updates is going to do, when that option's checked on, and it's going through and detailing members, it's going to bring you up the progress bar, and within that progress bar, per detail, it's going to show which detailing template is currently being applied at that point of time on that specific member. The reason this option could be useful is if you're developing, you're modifying, or creating your own templates, and possibly you've made the rule maybe a little too generic, it's providing too many solutions, it may take a little bit longer for that rule to apply. With this option checked on, you'll be able to visually see within the progress which template is being hung up on, and then you can go back and modify and figure out where your particular mistake might have been made at. And then finally here, we have show applied templates. All this is going to do is once the member or material has been detailed, it's going to go through and take a list of all the particular templates that were used to apply every single annotation and dimension on that particular detail, and just add a label underneath the member callout of all the different template names. Once again, those two are mainly going to be used for development purposes. In a live project, I would only use detailing using templates, and I would check on the remove snap lines, as I don't need to see those on every particular detail. So with detailing templates turned on, I'll go through and start detailing my members. As soon as the first detail has been completed, I can open up Drawing Editor and I can start cleaning up or reviewing that particular member's detail. But before we get into reviewing and making many type of modifications, there's one other area I just want to touch on. And that's going to be going back to that member annotations and dimensions dialog box. Is there any default setting? Maybe I'm going to be working on development all day and I don't want to have to go back and check on verbose templates every single time. In your setup job or Fabricator options, you have a new option in here called detailing annotation dimensioning defaults. When I check that option on, it's going to bring up a very similar menu. We have specific menus different for members, group members, or submaterial details. But with it set to member details, and I always want to verbose progress updates, I can check that option on by default, hit OK, and then therefore when I go to detail members every single time, that option will be checked on by default. Therefore, I don't have to check it on manually each time I go to member, or each time I go to detail my members. So like I said, I did want to show everybody here that you do have the ability to set that, or, possibly you do want to show your snap lines, or in one situation you don't want to use templates here or there, you can uncheck this by default. So we went through, we know what a template is, we know where they're stored at, we know how to detail using templates. The next thing we need to know is how can we find a particular rule, knowing that a template is just a list of different rules that adds annotations and dimensions to our member details. How can I find a particular rule that created something so I can make modifications to it? I'm going to open up a particular member here. We'll just go to B11 in this case. Going back to the previous idea that these templates are going to be capable of being modified by the end user. Like I said before, all your tools can be found in the process pull down under template detailing tools. Now, we can go through and control or find which particular rule and or template created a dimension simply by using a tool called creating rule. Creating rule can be ran in either a post or pre-selection command method. In this situation, I'll run it in sort of in a post selection, so I'll select my command, and then from there I'll just select my particular rule that I want to have highlighted, and it'll bring up this warning list. This warning list is just going to show the template and then which particular rule that was created for that. One thing as you're going through and utilizing this, the first number here underneath the template is going to be the actual template priority. And then after that, you're going to see the template name. Throughout the design data's situation or features here, we've tried to give the template the same name or start the name with the priority number. If for whatever reason you start developing your own or you make modifications to the priority of our particular templates, you may find that the name versus the priority do not match up. So like I said, just be aware that the template, this first number here is the priority, and then the number within here is just going to be part of the name or description of the template. And then after that, like I said, we do have the rule priority, and then the actual name of the rule within here. So now that I can see this is on template 1020 and it's rule 11, I can close that. And if I want to make modifications to that, I can go to load template, and I can browse to that particular template. I said that was 1020, so there's template 1020. Once I load a template, it's going to bring up my detailing rules list, basically all the different rules that make up that particular template. Each one of these rules will apply a slightly different dimension or annotation. Another nice trick here using the creating rule is that once I find and have that template loaded up, if I don't want to filter through this list and find it, as there could be some templates that might have 70 or 80 different rules instead of 8 or 9 in this case. With this detailing rules list selected, and I run creating rule a second time, it's going to bring up the same warning, but it's also going to go through and highlight that particular rule in that list. And then from here, if I need to make any modifications to it, I can just double click on the actual rule to bring up my edit detailing rules window. Now just a couple things to point out here before we get into some other topics regarding the disabling of rules and templates. I just want to briefly go over this window. Like I said, this is going to be your particular rules edit window. Up top, like I said, we have our description and the rule priority, which view it's meant to apply to. But really the one thing I want to get across right now, here's all my named locations that must be matched. So named location 0, it has to be left member setback in this case, and it's going to some particular whole property here. So like I said, in order for this rule to be applied, all these named locations must be matched. Once it does, it'll apply whatever set in my items column. In this case here, the item that's set to be applied is a dimension. I could also go through and set that to a label or a line, a symbol, anything else like that. Now, one thing I want to point out here, if you weren't paying attention exactly on that, I can expand and or collapse these different items and named locations simply by clicking on the item that it is. So if I select dimension, I can collapse it or expand it. Same thing with named locations. I can select it to expand and collapse. The final column of information is going to be additional constraints. These constraints can be set up to provide further filtering for when a template or a rule should or should not be applied. But really today we're going to focus mainly on the items and an option up here within our general properties. So like I said, we can use creating rule to find the rule and or template that was used to apply a specific dimension. Let's change over to a different detail and we'll start talking about another situation. So on B41, I have a beam with some clip angles and a standard horizontal or vertical brace gusset plate on here. Maybe in my situation, I don't want to go through and I don't want to apply any type of gusset plate dimensions. I'll handle all of my submaterial dimensions on my submaterial detail, therefore I don't need them cluttering up my member detail. Well, by default, SDS2 in design data, we try to provide all the necessary dimensions and the annotations the majority of our customers would normally appreciate on their details. That being said, just as in my example here, one company may want to have those dimensions, while another company may not want to have those dimensions. In previous versions of SDS2, what you'd find yourself doing is that if you did not want to have these dimensions on there, you are forced to go through and delete the dimensions off of every single detail that would have those on there. And if the member ever had to get redetailed, you'd have to redetail it and re-delete all those same dimensions. Well, the idea behind templates or detailing templates is that you can go through and we can just tell the system do not apply any of these dimensions, therefore preventing you from ever having to delete them in the first place. And in the end, saving you time and the cleanup time of having to delete these every single time and off of every other member detail. So, how do we disable or how do we prevent these rules from being applied? Well, the first thing that I'm going to do, I'll unshorten my detail, I need to figure out which rule and which template apply to every one of these annotations. So once again, I'm going to go back to my template detailing tools, and I'm going to use creating rule. And I'll select a particular dimension. I can see that's in template 1080, rule 41. I'll select maybe another one here, template 1080, rule 43. Okay, so for the most part, it seems like a lot of the rules that I'm going to be dealing with here are going to be found in template 1080. So let's just go ahead and load template 1080. So I'll go to load template, select 1080. If I expand this window, we can see versus the last window, this one has a significant amount more rules within this list. Therefore, utilizing creating rule here is going to be much more efficient than manually going through and finding rule 41 or anything else. So I'm going to start by going through and finding which rule created this particular reference dimension, rule 41. From here, I'll go through to edit it. I'll just double click on it. And then in my general properties, I have a checkbox for disable rule. When I check that option on, you notice that becomes sort of highlighted red. As well, the rule in my list also becomes highlighted red, just visually showing you that that particular rule has been disabled. Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to start cleaning up or finding some of these other dimensions to start removing. And I'm going to start disabling. In the end, what I want to have when I redetail this, I don't want to have any of these whole dimensions across here or over here show up. So just using creating rule, find which rule went through and did so. Let's do a few more here. Get the point across. I think we all have an understanding of what we're doing. Disabling the rule. Let's do a few more. I went through and I've ran through this a couple times here just to prevent the repetitive steps here. I'm just going to pick the one or two other ones that I still need to have disabled. So we got the 41s, 43s, And last couple here. Now I went through and I've disabled a lot of those particular rules that dealt with all the whole dimensions. Like I said, just creating rule to find them in the list. I'll go through and I'll save my template by clicking save down here at the bottom of my detailing rules list. I'll go through and overwrite that. And then from here, if I want to go through and redetail this member, I'll use detail current piece mark in this case, and I'll use templates. Once this finishes, we'll go through and we can see now I've went through and disabled all those particular dimensions, all my different holes, and regarding the gusset plates on this particular beam detail. Once again, the idea behind this is that I don't want to see any of those dimensions on there. Instead of me being forced to select them all and delete them off of every detail that's similar to this, I can just disable the rule that's applying those, and therefore never having to delete those dimensions again for the life of this particular template. So next, we can figure out how we can disable individual rules. How about disabling entire templates? I'm going to change over to B11. A lot of times what you're going to find is that the templates that we've created here at Design Data, if you're going to modify any of ours, is that a lot of the templates are going to be grouped together so they all apply like entities. So one template may only apply main material hole dimensions, and one template's going to be set to apply overall dimensions. One template's going to be used to the dimension maybe my outstanding leg and my clip angles. So let's use that as my idea here. I have these few dimensions here, the 4.5 and 3 and 3 and 3, calling out the outstanding leg dimensions. Maybe once again I don't need to have those on my member detail. I want to have those on my submaterial detail. I definitely showed you that we could just load that particular template and we could disable the individual rules. Well, first off, let's figure out which rule created those dimensions. I'm going to use creating rule again to find that. It's going to be template 1020, rule 11, and we'll do one more of those. Creating rule, template 1020, rule 10. So like I said, under the understanding here that we do have templates that are going to be wrote up to handle similar or like areas, if I go to load template and I load up that 1020, I can see it's got 8 rules in there. Out of those 8 rules, they're all set to only apply to the outstanding leg of the clip angles. Even the name of the template calls out beam, hole group, clip angle, OSL ends. So I can see I could go through and I could disable each one of those templates individually, or rules. But what I want to show in this case is I want to disable the entire template in general, thus preventing any of those rules inside the template from even being applied. In my template detailing tools, I have an option in here called template properties. When I select that, it's going to bring up my template manager, and it's just going to list all the particular templates within my default _ templates folder. As I scroll through here, we may see that we do have some that are sort of disabled already. We can see those by the visual red color. I can find the template that I'm questioning, template 1020, and with that selected, I have a checkbox here to disable that template. As soon as I check on that particular template becomes that red color. There is no save within the template manager. This is immediately saved off as soon as you click OK here. So once I click OK, that change has been made. That entire template has been disabled. And then from here, if I go through and redetail a few members, so here's B11, I'm just going to take a look at a few other ones. We have B12, it's got the similar dimensions on the outstanding leg on either end. Same thing, 13 and 14. When I go to detail, I'll just detail those 4 members, and I'll use templates. Now that I've disabled the entire template, though, none of those particular dimensions should be applied. Now you can see on the left and right hand side, I no longer have the outstanding leg dimensions. If I needed to do additional cleanup to clean up the labels here, I'd have to track down that rule and maybe make different modifications from there as well. But looking through B11 and B12, B13 and B14, I have now disabled the entire template. Therefore, I never have to go through and delete those dimensions again off of any type of beam detail with clip angles on the left or right hand side. So that's going to be a couple of basic modifications that we can make, just going through and disabling rules, disabling templates, finding those rules that created them so we can make different modifications, maybe to the snapline name or to a particular named location, or maybe we want to filter it down with additional constraints. Another very common request that we get quite often from different customers is going to be, I'll take for an example, a notch tube brace. A lot of times customers would want to see the term centered called out within there. So if I open up, I have a few braces here in this job, a couple tube braces, and I got them set to be detailed horizontally here. A lot of times customers want to see centered or some type of abbreviation of centered called out underneath this different notch call out. Well, in previous versions, what you were forced to do is go through, and you could multi-edit, or you'd manually be editing these. And you type in centered or whatever text you'd want to have into that secondary label dimension field. Once I hit OK, there's my call out. But the problem with that is that if my quantity changes, if anything changes about that member and it needs to get redetailed, when I go to redetail that, I lose that call out. Now I'm forced to go back and make the exact same change again. So like I said, the idea of templates is preventing you from having to do as much cleanup work. So if these things are that you're doing is on a day-by-day case on every detail, why not tell the template to apply it in the first place? Well, how can we make changes to that? Just as we did before, I need to figure out which rule and which template created these particular annotations. So I'll go back to my process pull down and go to template detailing tools. And I'm going to run the same command we've been running before, creating rule. I'm going to select my particular dimension, and I can see that template 4050, rule 335 created that call out. I'll load my template 4050. And once again, there's quite a few call outs in here. Maybe I don't remember the exact rule number. I'll use creating rule again to highlight it in my list. And then from here I can edit that particular rule. As I stated earlier, we have the three different columns of information here, our name, location, which item is supposed to be applied, and the different additional constraints. Being that this is going to be a dimension item, just like I manually did so in the drawing before, I edited the dimension and then typed in a value. I'm going to do the same here. I'm going to select my dimension, and at the bottom I have this field called Edit Item. And within here I have my secondary label text. Now you may see this $ and brackets with quotes. That's just to prevent a secondary dimension from being applied if you ever had secondary dimensions turned on. In this case here, I don't want to have that empty space there. I want to put in my actual text, my abbreviation for centered in this case. I'll go through and put in CNTR in this case. I'll hit OK and hit OK. Now I've made that change. That change is not going to immediately apply. I'll have to either redetail or I can reapply the template and rules in this window. But before I do so, I want to make sure I accommodated for all the different rules that might have done so. Now, in different scenarios, one rule may go through and only apply this one dimension, while another rule went through and applied this dimension. Let's go through and let's make sure we double check that. If I select the bottom left notch, I can see that's now rule 331. So I'll make the same change to this. I'll edit the rule, and under my dimensions, under Edit Item, I'll change my label text to my secondary label, CNTR. And I might as well check my other two labels over here as well, 337. Good thing I checked because those are different rules that have created these. If I don't make the change to all of them, it's only going to apply the changes to the ones I actually did change. And the final one in this case, 333, CNTR. Now that I've made my changes, I'll make sure I save my template. I'll overwrite my changes. And then from here, I'll just redetail those couple of braces just so we can see the exact results at the end. I'll use my templates. Now I have my call out of CNTR below each one of those notches. Therefore, if the member ever needs to get redetailed, that call out is part of the rules that get applied when the detailing happens. Therefore, I'll never have to go through and re-add that or possibly forget about adding that because I'm in a time crunch or anything else like that. So like I said, utilize templates to make your life simpler, and that's those labels, those dimensions that you're constantly adding or editing to apply maybe a slightly different label text is automatically in there by default. Therefore, you don't have to change it on a case-by-case scenario. Another good example of that might be when you have different copes or cuts on your wide flanges. A common example would be some customers like to see maybe cut and grind flush or cut and grind. SDS2 is not going to put all that text in there by default. But like I said, maybe if your fabricator, your company wants to see that call out on there, you can find the rule, just like we use creating rule here, and append that particular label. So moving on, now we've talked about some of the basics here. I hope we all have a little bit more of the knowledge on making different modifications, finding the rules, going through disabling rules, disabling templates. We can see now how we can make those easy label changes. The next thing, the final thing I really want to show you here now today for some of these basic modifications is maybe how can I go through it and make some different overrides. So I'm looking here at a particular column, and I'm just going to use this space C gauge callout as my example. Right now, within my global setup, so under options, fabricator options, and my drawing cosmetics, I have my detailing label pin set to pin 4 here, the green color. Well, what would happen if I want to override my global setup? I want this one label to maybe be pin 5, be more of a cyan color in this case here. It doesn't have to be just this gauge callout. It could be any label on my member detail. I'm just using the gauge as my example. How can I override that? Let's start off, let's find the rule and the template that created or added in that particular label. So I'm going to use my creating rule feature again. Template 2840, rule 2. I said template 2840, rule 2, pretty easy in this one. So if I added that rule, in this case here, that rule is added in actually 2 different items. It's adding in a pointer and it's adding in a label. So both of those items we can see in the items callouts, or items column in this case. If I want to change the label settings of that particular label, I can expand the label, and just like we had in the dimension field, I have an edit item. It's going to bring up a window very similar to your label edit screen that you'd see just by editing the label in the drawing. From here, like I said, I'll have a different string of text that's going to get the actual gauge, in this case, of that member or that piece of material. But like I said, maybe in this case here, I want to override, instead of using my pin 4, I want this to be pin 5. And for additional purposes, maybe I want to change the font here from SDS2 font to something maybe slightly different. So use maybe an Arial font. I can go through, I'll hit OK, made my changes, I'll hit OK again. I'll make sure I save my templates, as that's what we've been seeing so far. And I'm going to redetail this member. And I'll use detail current piece mark for the time. Once this goes through, okay, the label didn't change here. Let's go back and I'm going to reload that. Maybe let's double check, make sure I didn't accidentally forget to set something, anything else. If I edit that rule, go back into my label and go to edit item. My font still changed, so I still have it set to pin 5, but my override here did not take effect. Well, there's a reason behind that. Outside of the edit rule list, or outside the edit label window, I have a feature in here called freeze item settings within that label. If I pull that menu down, with it set to none, if I pull that menu down, I have the ability to freeze different items about this particular label. I can freeze just the aspects, the character width height ratio, and so on. I can freeze the aspect and the fonts, or I can freeze all 3, basically allowing me to override my global setup. In this case here, I just went through and I just overrode, or what I want to override is the font and the actual pin. So I'll set this to fonts and pins. And with that change in there for my freeze item settings, I'm telling the system, override my global setup and use these settings for this particular label every single time. So I'll make my changes and I'll save my templates. Let's detail this member one more time here. And once that's complete, I can see my font has changed and now my pin has changed. Like I said, that only applied to that one particular member or one particular label on this detail. If I detailed any other column that had that gauge call out, that change would be effective on those members as well. So like I said, I can override my global setup within the rules as well for different label settings. I can do the same with my dimension settings if I want to have one dimension maybe be a different pen color, or maybe it has a cloud or a rectangular border around, so I can do so as well. So I can override global setup on an individual rule case. Now, one other option that you might have seen if you're going through and you've been testing with 2015 so far is that within your options pull down, under in Drawing Editor, you also have this Drawing Options field. What is that? Basically, this is just going to be a global override per detail. So I'm going to use this C37 as my example. If I want to override, maybe I want to change all my labels on C37 instead of being a pin 4, or being pin 4 green. I want to make them all maybe magenta. We'll go set pin 7 there, pin 6. So under my Drawing Cosmetics, under Drawing Options, my detailing label pen, maybe I want them all to be pin 7, this magenta color. I can specify so. You'll see that within any of the fields within the drawing options, there's going to be an auto feature. Anytime that's set to auto, that's just meaning that it's going to read from whatever your normal global setup is going to be doing. And like I said, from here, I can override my global setup on a drawing per drawing case. Like I said, in this case, I'll set it to magenta and hit OK. Now, one thing I want you to be aware of really quick with the drawing options, that these options will only be applicable when you're using templates. If you're detailing with system dimensions, these drawing overrides are not going to work. So with that option set, I'm going to change out and I'm going to redetail C37. And I'll use templates again. Once that is complete, I'll open up my member again, and we can see now all my detailing label pins have been now changed to pin 7. But if I was to redetail any other member, let's take for an example this VB59. If I was to redetail that member, my labels will not have been changed. Notice that there's still the green label there, pin 4. Because I only overrode my labels on this one particular drawing. Final thing, with this, we can see that my gauge callout is still used in cyan and the Arial fonts. Once again, we changed that on the rule level. So we bypassed everything regarding setup and said, I want this one rule to be different. That's why this one did not change versus all my other labels, because we changed it on the rule level in this case. So in the end here this morning, we've talked about a few different things. We've talked about really what are templates and where are they going to be stored at, how they're applied just by scouring through the member detail, looking for all the named locations. Once they're matched, it applies the particular annotation or particular dimensions. We've also we've shown some different tools to list or to visually see the different named locations and their properties. We've seen another tool within our template detailing tools for finding which rule and or template created a particular dimension. We've also went through and we've seen how we can disable rules, how we can disable templates, and finally, we've seen that we can go through and we can make modifications to different labels, and we can override global setup on a drawing or on a rule basis.